Superman Red Son is the latest DC animated movie, a pretty solid one, with some hiccups like Wonder Woman's feminist man bashing can wear very thin, but still a solid adaptation of an interesting comic book that answers the question of what would happen if Superman's ship crash landed in the Soviet Union during the Cold War. And it handles the source material in the question really well. We get characters like Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, of course, Lois Lane, Lex Luthor. And although we get these Elseworld versions of the character where we have hero Lex Luthor, even though he does go to some morally questionable places at times, which is one of the things I like, because even though we see these vastly different versions of these characters, there's still elements of the versions we are all familiar with in them. Superman, you believe, legitimately does want to still help people. Batman's still the vigilante genius we all know, and he is more or less, they don't come right out and say it, but he's being funded by Lex Luthor. Although Lex Luthor is the hero, as I said, and hero is kind of a loose term, but he's the one opposed to Superman. He will do things and not bat an eye that you're like, yeah, that's crossing a line. Like when he made the clone Superman and he pushed it to its limits till it basically became Bizarro and died, and he showed no emotion over it. Which again, I thought was a very good touch, because we get to see those glimpses of the characters as we know them in them. Superman, it was an interesting journey with him, because we go from seeing him as a boy in the Soviet Union to a part of the Soviet military to ultimately killing Stalin and becoming the leader of the Soviet Union, which is, it goes pretty fast from one point to the other. In the inciting incident, he finds Lois, in another interesting thing, this Superman hates and doesn't trust the press. After a satellite falls and Superman stops it from crashing into Metropolis, Lois asks to interview him. He's like, the press is the enemy of the people. Why should I talk to you so you can distort my words? And he ultimately does meet with her later, and she gives him this information. And it leads to Superman finding a Soviet prison camp, and there is this girl in the camp who was a childhood friend of his who dies, and we even see the kid that would go on to become Batman, which is also nice because stuff like that gives you an idea how much time lapses in this story, as well as the various presidents that are in the White House at the time. So from that point, it was really well done. Brainiac shows up, and this is where it gets interesting. Superman defeats him, and we see Brainiac as kind of an AI assistant, in where Superman condemned what Stalin did. What he does is a lot worse in a lot of ways. He uses Brainiac's technology to effectively make servitors, and this isn't going to be the only 40K reference I throw in here. For those of you that don't know what servitors are, in 40K they lobotomize criminals, give them a bunch of cybernetic implantations and even mechanical limbs, and turn them into slaves. And even though Superman doesn't go to that extreme, he still lobotomizes them and forces them, and they're just there to do menial labor. So we see he crosses lines himself, even though we believe he legitimately wants to help the people. It's an interesting thing where you see this character who's clearly a dictator but you can see how misguided he is and see his true good intentions. Lex Luthor is married to Lois Lane in this, and there's a kind of interesting dynamic between them I don't want to get into. It's just a very unique Superman story you're not gonna find anywhere else, and it was just well executed again for the most part. We get to see Green Lanterns in this. Wonder Woman, I do feel, and it was the same way in the comics, so this isn't just the writing's fault, it's the source material. I feel like she's wasted in all she'll talk about men this, men that. Although her one cool thing, her armor, the eagle on her armor, it's a double-headed eagle. And again, it reminds me of the sigil for the Imperium of Man from Warhammer 40k. Told you I was going to have more than one Warhammer reference in this video. And she ultimately gets bound by Batman, who's a terrorist in this. I mean, even if you sympathize with his goals of overthrowing the Soviet Union, he resorts to terrorist tactics, bombing buildings. He even finds a way to bind Wonder Woman with the lasso, which she has to break at great personal cost to her, and trapping Superman with red solar lamps, which Superman isn't aware will weaken him. This is a one part where, and it was the same way in the comic, so I can't totally fault the movie for this, but again, it's where the writing kinda, yeah, Batman, if you had just, Superman let you punch him because he didn't think it was going to do a thing. So if you had just pulled a knife and shanked him or shot him in the face, he would have been dead to rights and it would have been over, but because the plot required Superman to be around till the end, Batman just has to physically pound the daylights out of him until Wonder Woman breaks the lasso, and before Superman can turn Batman into a servitor, he detonates a bomb he had surgically implanted in his body, taking himself out. Again, a very different Batman than we're used to, but as far as how he plans everything out and the tactical genius he is, again, there's still elements of the character we're more familiar with in them, which I can't state enough is my favorite thing about this adaptation. And it even goes to where we see Superman go to war with South Korea to fold it into communism with North Korea. He takes it back in 3 hours. Communism's overtaking everything, and the US is pretty much the last stand. And here's what I like, because again, we see elements of the characters how we know them in here. The way Lex has Superman wake up and realize, oh wait, I've gone too far, is very simple, but very brilliant. All I'm going to say is Brainiac attacked, as I mentioned, Brainiac showed up. He attacked the Soviet Union, and Stalingrad is in a bottle, much like Kandor. And he's just told something about that city that wakes him up. And we do get to see Superman and Lex Luthor have to join forces to stop Brainiac. At this point, Lex Luthor is president. And Superman has to potentially sacrifice himself to save the world. We get a nice scene tied up where Lex Luthor stands down and resigns as president, so Vice President James Olsen can take over, which is another interesting thing. Jimmy Olsen is Lex Luthor's best friend in this universe. And we do briefly get to see the Russian Superman in a Clark Kent-esque disguise, and the movie ends. The ending is different than the ending in the comic book, which I'm not going to spoil because you have to experience that ending for yourself, and it's going to be a love it or hate it thing, so probably for the best they left it out of Red Son the movie, but the way it ends on a satisfying note. I'm going to give this film an A. Solid voice acting all the way around. Jason Isaacs, who I think is a phenomenal talent, did great as Superman, even though I don't have much respect for him because of comments he made when he was on Star Trek Discovery that kind of crossed a line between having an opinion and being a complete and total jackwagon who thinks your opinion is superior to others. And I lost a lot of respect for him as a person, but no denying he still is a phenomenal talent. I do highly recommend this movie. So I definitely say go out and buy it because it's worth it if you're a comic book fan, if you're a Superman fan, and especially if you want to see a unique, different take on Superman. This movie is for you. So don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Over and out.